So today's session, we're going to talk about back to the basics, taking it back a step. What does that mean? Well, there's a lot of new features that show up in Jira. There's a lot of cool things that happen in Jira. But the foundation of Jira has always been your projects. Spaces. Of course, my demo site now is Spaces today. Was projects until this morning. So I'm going to say projects a lot. You know what I mean, Spaces anytime, change them. But there's been a lot of changes with that. And it's really good because you can spin up a Jira project space really quick nowadays. But the data you're going to get out of Jira is only as good as the data you put in. And having a good project base going over those basics, your basics ingredients, so you can have a nice meal is really important. So that's what we're going to cover today. So with the show of hands, who's been using Jira for less than a year? All right, all right.
We got a new member.
Less than 2 years. Okay. Who's been using it more than 5? Okay, so that's fun. You might find this a little, let's go back. We're just going to talk about the basics. So let's talk really quick though. I'm going to take a quick moment here. You see this link here? Go ahead and go to that. If you have a computer with you, we're going to build a project together if you want. So if you go to this link, it's going to take you to a demo site. You should be able to sign up and have full access to the demo site. That will be deleted after this presentation. I have it set to self-destruct. Sign up for that and we'll be able to build a project together because we're going to go over a few things. But first, I'll wait for everybody to take a look at that. I do have a few other slides as well. All right, I'm going to switch slides and you'll see here in a second. I'm going to take a quick moment to thank Release Team for allowing me to be here. There are some circumstances where I wasn't going to be able to make it, but Release Team was also a sponsor for the summit. Stepped up and allowed me to show out here and do a talk yesterday and do this final talk today. So a little bit about Release Team. They are a DevOps tool specialist with consulting services and implementations, migrations, upgrades, staff augmentation. They are an Atlassian Gold Solution partner, veteran owned and operate in USA and Canada. We might even have someone from Release Team here. He just left. Never mind. That was bad timing.
He was here.
He was here. He just left. Here's some of the partners that they are partnered with. You'll see Atlassian's up there, Tempo, some names that we all see commonly when we're working with the Atlassian tool suite or with the ops tools. And there's that slide again because apparently it duplicated. A little bit about myself. My name is Brian Schauer. I've been dealing with the Atlassian suite of tools for 14 plus years now. I started off as a user, just adding people to Jira, then became an admin, a consultant, and an architect. Up until recently, about 2 weeks ago, we did travel, my family and I, full-time in our fifth wheel RV for 3.5 years around the country. We went to the West Coast, all the way up to Prince Edward Island in Canada, Florida, and now we've settled in Minneapolis, Minnesota, one of the most random places, for the next few years. So it's been cool. If you want to talk travel, that's one of my favorite things to talk about. We went from 300 square feet to now 2,000 square feet. So my wife's really enjoying buying stuff to decorate just any empty space that is available. I enjoy board games. I'm a big Godzilla fan. I enjoy barbecue. Me and Ed had a nice little chat yesterday for about an hour about random barbecue stuff, which is always nice. And I play Magic the Gathering. I brought 0 decks. I'm not letting anybody on here. So our agenda. We're just going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do today. We're going to look at the real world customer request. We're going to break down the request and make it into a project. We're going to find out what the customer is actually looking for, figuring out what's the foundation compared to what's the enhancements. What's the core? What's the nice to have? The nice to have, we can figure that out later on. We want to give them a good base. We'll talk about takeaways and then we'll have any questions. If we get done early, everybody doesn't want to have any questions and wants to leave, we can also do that too. So, why does the foundation matter? Like I said earlier, in Jira, there's a lot of new features. A lot of things happen. There's a lot of new things that show up within Jira. That means more complexity. That means a lot more workflow functionalities, automation functionalities, screens, fields, everything like that. It becomes complex, which can make it kind of a tangled mess. I do have the presentation skills of a 12-year-old, so just in case you're wondering, I'm going to use memes and stuff. So why is it going to have a solid structure? Because when we're having people use tools such as Jira, you're wanting to use it for scalability and for clarity. Like I said, the information you're getting out of Jira is only as good as the information you're putting in. If you have a lot of iterations, confusing information in there, your users are not going to adapt into using the tool if it's too confusing. If you have 30 statuses, nobody wants to scroll that list of 30 statuses, right? You want something that's clear. I want to know point A to B to C to D. And maybe there's a D1, a D2. You never know. Good structure reduces rework. Nothing is ever steady. It's not always static. There's going to be things that need to change. If you have a good structure when you build your project, you're going to be able to continue adapting on that, building on that, and keeping that good structure there. It's going to allow you to make that rework simpler, standardized, to add that extra functionality. And then, as I said now, data out is as good as the data you put in. So the reason that's there is, by a show of hands, or even just hey, I've had this. How many of you have ever taken over a Jira site, a Jira instance, TV server, data center, cloud, and looked at, let's say, how many workflows it was, or a workflow, and you go, what the hell is going on? Right? Is it? I took over at a healthcare company, and that was my face day one when we said, we need you to come in and clean up this instance. What? There was one workflow that had 72 statuses. Anybody here, can you figure out how to see all 72 statuses along with all the transitions? No, it was like, I don't know, it was bad.
What's the next transition? I believe the answer you're looking for is a jumbotron.
Yeah. There's other words I want to say, but this is a PG show.
Well, the 72 statuses, were they all linked or there's just?
They were all over the place. They were, and
Anything to anything?
yeah, it was, some of it was anything to anything, and some of it was, it would go here, and then it would go down. Then it would go down, and then it would go to QA2, QA3, QA4. What does all that mean? No one cares. All right, so once again, we're going to look at the customer request, and we're going to build a project to build that strong foundation. So if you go to this link, like I said earlier, you should be able to sign into the site. You should have full permissions, so you should be able to create a project as well. Our customer request is going to be found right here. So if you click on that, that should take you to a Confluence page that you should have access to. Now you have to do step 1 to do step 2. If you're here for my talk yesterday and signed up yesterday, you already did step 1. Step 2 just going to the Confluence page. I'll give everybody just a few moments here to do that. I'm going to take a drink of water.
For those of
Why
us
does that water look like tequila?
It's not, for legal reasons, it's not tequila. It's filtered water. Is anybody successfully getting in? Is anybody unsuccessfully getting in? All right. Oh, yeah. Let's do another step. I'll go to the next slide, which is going to show the customer request. Like I said, you can do this step if you want to build the project. I'm going to kind of go over it as well, what the project looks like. So let's say go to the customer request. I came up with a really creative name, Acme Corp. They came in with a request where they are working in emails, spreadsheets, and they're missing a lot of their work. Also in Slack. So you can see here, the background of the company is the support team uses spreadsheets, emails, and Slack. They're missing requests, there's slow escalations, and unclear reporting. They don't know what's actually going on. The visibility into what their team is doing is not there. They have some goals. They want to centralize support requests in Jira. They want to have that one source of truth. They want a transparent and predictable workflow. Right now, they're not looking for anything crazy. They just want to know the life cycle of that work item. Point A, to point B, to point C, to point N. And then they want timely updates for customers and managers. That seems like a pretty good request, right? That seems pretty realistic. And here's kind of the context that they have within their team. They have support agents who handle requests, and then they'll escalate any technical issues. They got managers who track workload, resolution times, and escalations. Then they have engineers who resolve escalated technical issues. And then they have customers. Obviously, they want some updates, and they have some premium SLAs. So this is the part where I'm going to ask you some questions. And I'm going to take a break from talking for a minute. Looking at this request, this is kind of a nice one because we got bullet points. We all know customer requests don't come this way. Usually it's an email with 3 paragraphs, words that you don't know, and you got to figure it out. So what would you say in this customer request? What type of work items do you think they would need in this request? If you don't know the answer, that's fine. There's no wrong answer. Yeah, it's kind of small. Yeah. You see how I can zoom in. Yeah, let me see. That was really hard to do this way, isn't it?
Are you on Windows?
Yeah.
I think it's Alt plus.
Is it? Oh, that's not even making it bigger either.
Just Control plus your computer.
Control plus?
If you want to screen your own.
No.
I thought about telling you it was Alt F4.
Which one? What?
I thought about telling you it was Alt F4.
No, thank you. All right, I'll move on to the next one that will show it to.
F11 will make it a full screen and give you bedroom space.
Oh, yeah.
Nope.
All right, that's fine. We'll just move on to the next slide. We'll be good. Okay. This is over another. So before we get into those questions, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. I apologize. Let's talk about in that request, what are the core, what feature are the cores of a Jira project? Anybody tell me what you think is a core thing of a Jira project? When you think of a project, what is a core item? Work type, for sure. Anything else that you can see that would be a core item? Not an enhancement, but a core item.
Workflow.
Screen, yeah. Workflows as well. There's a little cheat code there. Screens, permissions, and notifications. Now, in that request, they mentioned that they have customers who are looking for SLAs, a few other items. Those right now aren't really part of that core requirement to build a project. That's something that we can build on after we get the core part of our project built, our workflows, our screens, our work items, because SLAs, they all work off of those items, right?
What about filters?
Yeah. Filters I would also consider an enhancement item as well, along with dashboard, because you need to have these back in the actual filter, unless you just want to search for everything, right? So SLAs, automations, forms if you're doing service management, dashboards, and then so on the left-hand side is what we're going to focus on with the project build. We're going to focus on work item types, workflows, screens, permissions, notifications. As I said earlier, we can build with templates, but we're not going to build with a template because what the templates do, they are nice. They are nice for spinning up a project really fast, but what they're also really nice for, and I come from server and data center, are creating workflows that are the exact same each time, but with a different name at the end of it. And that eventually, if you were here yesterday for Matt's talk, that eventually comes to a limitation in cloud, for sure, because you're taking up that space. You're having, your admins are trying to go through and find which workflow, and all of them are software, Steam, workflow, project, 1, 2, 3, software, Steam, project, workflow, 4, 5, 6. and they're all the same thing. So we're gonna do a blank project, because it's fun, why not? We're gonna define the work item types. We're gonna build the workflows, we're not doing anything crazy, it's a simple workflow. We're gonna configure screens. May not have time for that, I was pretty ambitious when I said that. We'll see. We're gonna link the schemes. So schemes are the trickier part here. Because each scheme is different, each scheme type is different. A work item type scheme, pretty simple. That's your work items, right? Your workflow scheme, you got your workflow, you've got your work item type, and there's your scheme. Screens. Who loves putting together screen schemes? Because you got your screen. You got your screen schemes. You've got your screen scheme issue type, work item type. So that you're doing all these things to get your screen going. So you have your create screen, your edit screen, your view screen, along with whatever the work item is associated with that. So it's important to make sure you understand the schemes when you're putting these together, so you know what the end user is seeing once again building a strong core. And then we have permissions and notifications. We probably won't build those today, but those are important. Permissions are very important because if you don't have the right permissions, nobody's getting in to see the project that you built really well. And notifications, they're very important to let people know, but it's also very important to not spam people. How many people here have dealt with an inbox of just Jira notifications? How long before you start ignoring those? Is it you may the fifth one, the sixth one?
Oh, no, you don't ignore them, you just set up a rule.
You set up a rule, they don't have filter. Right.
And move to filter.
I can go to my mailbox right now and you can see the amount of ones that moves to my Jira issues filter, and it's scary. So it's very important to set up permissions and also to set it up in a way that you can have your customers or whoever's admin those projects do a little bit of self-service as well. So we'll talk about that too. So can we build it? Yes. Yes, we can. So like I said, I'm 12-year-old when it comes to presentation. So if you wanted to, you can go ahead and, like I said, go to that link and you can create a project. If you never created a project in Jira before, it's pretty okay. You go to, yeah. So I want to go back up. So you'll see on your sidebar, you've got these projects on your sidebar. There's a plus button right there. Go ahead and click that plus button. And then towards the bottom of it, okay, there's going to be where we're going to select Jira as the project. I'm going to scroll down again. And then there's going to be an option for blank project. So you're going to hit the plus button next to project. Oh, I can also do this.
Oh, yeah.
It's my first day, guys. So you see here, you got this plus button. We'll hit that plus button next to projects. We're going to scroll down to Jira. You do have all of these templates, but we're going to go ahead and go to blank project. So from there, what you can do, so that way we know the whole class has participated, or at least whoever's participating has participated. Put in the name as customer support requests. With that, for the key, you want to make sure the name makes sense so that when they're looking at the projects or spaces, they know exactly what they're navigating to. I think Mark talked about this yesterday in his Agile talk, making sure you have clear definitions and names for your spaces or projects. And then for the key, let's just use CSR and then your initials. That's just so that way I know get rid of the correct projects. Another thing with keys, like names, make sure they make sense. Don't just make it numbers. That's weird. And unless it makes sense to you guys, I wouldn't do that. So you'll see here, I went ahead and I created one customer support request. I put my initials on there. We're going to do company managed. There was a talk earlier today about team managed or team management solution. Don't build a team managed project unless you absolutely have to. I think it was called a temporary project. It is what somebody was saying. So company project is what we're gonna do for this one. Template, blank, and then the key is gonna be CRS with your initials. Yeah, whatever you want to do, whichever letter. It's the last talk. Next up, we're gonna talk about work item types. So in that request, it seemed pretty clear what they were looking for requests. They wanted requests to come in. They then wanted to have escalations. The reason they wanted to have escalations was because of the different team working escalations. I'll get to that in a second of why we're doing that as a different work item type. And then they also had change requests coming in eternally. So with work item types, we'll get through how to add those here in a second. Naming matters. So make sure you're using work item types names that make sense, that are clear. Also, don't get hung up on naming. You can reuse work item types that already exist. Bug and issue, those are pretty similar, right? Unless there's a lot of fight back, that's where you ask the question, why? Why do you want to have issue instead of bug? If you have one of those work item types already existing there, that name fits, reuse it. Because once again, you're using up real estate. Just reuse it if you can. But make sure the work item type makes sense. So like I said, we're going to do request, escalation, and change. And then I added an extra one in there, task. Because I feel like, why not? Let's add an extra one. So to add that, you're going to go into your project. There's a few ways you can add it, but I'm going to show you the way that I do it, which is still stuck in the ways of server and data center. I go to summary. Your summary is what I use like your map to me for your project. These are all your core components of your project. You'll notice everything that I've mentioned sits here in your summary. Work types. We didn't talk about priorities. We'll talk about those. I have a whole video about those. Workflows, items like that. So you can go to your project that you just created, and in there you should have probably a work type scheme that looks similar to this. You can click in there, and it's going to list out the work item types that you have. We have this handy actions button. You can select edit work items or work types. I can't see from this view the words it says. And then if you scroll down here, you have this nice little bar. You have this nice little graph. Left-hand side are the issue types for your current scheme. Right-hand side are your available issue types. It's just a drag and drop. So you can drag the ones that we're using and put them over here to the left-hand side, and take the ones that we're not using and drag them onto the right-hand side. This is where I'm going to go my pedestal for a second. I'll stand by the pedestal. Work item types are your backbone of your projects. Work item types are the most important thing that you have because they drive everything for your projects. Your workflows are based off of your work item types. Your screens are based off of your work item types. Your permissions are not. But don't forget, you can have things all based off of your work item types. So these are the things that drive your project. So this is why this is the first step we're covering, because this is the most important part. If you don't have these set up correctly, it gets messy. So having clear, understandable work item types are the strongest part of your backbone for your project. So if you added those, I'm just going to keep going so we don't run out of too much time here. We'll see that that's what we created. Workflow. I don't have time to go over workflow things, but if you want to go over workflows, I know there's quite a few videos out there going over workflows. I even have a video on Release Team's website or YouTube about going into workflows and how to create those. So they want simple, clear workflows. So we don't want anything where there's going to be 20 statuses. We want something clear so that they know where their work item is, where the life cycle of their tickets are. And the customers can understand where the life cycle of their ticket items are, work items are. So, in this scenario, will we do one workflow for all? No. Because they do have, it mentioned in the request, that there is a different team that looks at escalations, which means there's going to be a different process for escalations. And the way that we find that out, or the way that we can figure out what that process is just asking what does that team do when they get the work item? What are their steps so we can build that additional workflow? So we're going to talk about just the first main workflow. And this is a simple status. You want to try to keep your workflows, I always say, and Mark said this yesterday, about 10 statuses. You don't want to go super crazy. You can go more than that. I'm not saying if you have 11 statuses, no, you can have more, but keep it simple, keep it clear. Automation things can take care of a lot of that complication that goes within the workflows now. So we're going to have an open status, in progress, waiting for customer, waiting for support, and then close. Pretty simple, pretty basic, right? Now, not every workflow is going to be like this, but they wanted a clear workflow. This is as clear as it gets. It's open, somebody's working on it, we're waiting for them, they're waiting for us. We're done. That's it. In and out the door, for the low mission of $1. So, will there be any other additional statuses or any other type of transitions that we could do in here? Sure. They do have an escalation. Do we maybe have an escalation status that then creates that new ticket or does something along those lines? Maybe, but this is getting them their main core part of that bid. That other items I feel are enhancements at that point. Screens. Like I said earlier, you have your create screen, your edit screen. You also have a resolve screen, and then you have your view screen. Can anybody tell me the difference between the edit screen and the view screen? I think.
If you have something on the edit screen, you can actually edit it.
Mhm.
If not, don't see it.
Yeah, so if you don't have something on the view screen, I can't see it. Look at the view screen, see if you have a different view screen. Now, with JSM, there are different ways around adding fields to screens. You can go through and update your field kind of similar to how you do a customer request. But yeah, your create screen are your fields that show up when you hit that create button on a work item. Edit screen, when you go to edit, if you can hover over and edit a field, it's because it's on the edit screen. So if for some reason you can't edit a field, check the edit screen, see if it's on there. And then the view screen, once again, you can view it. The key thing with that is we also have more resolved work item screen. I don't know if this is much of an issue anymore. And anybody here that's been working with Jira for quite some time, you remember the issue of resolution, resolve, setting resolve as part of making that field editable back in the day would cause chaos. You used to have to do it as a workflow transition or as a pop-up as a screening. So that's something I still kind of stick with today, but I remember a long time ago, I don't know if it was still a thing, how long it was ago, but making the resolve field on the screen an editable field, it like would do it for a ton of issues. It wasn't clear. I had it happen accidentally once, and like our whole release is already done. It just started yesterday. That's why, because it did it for every ticket we had. So you can always do a resolve work item screening to allow that to pop up as part of your workflow.
Now, if you ever wanted to edit that after the fact, then you have to put an extra loop in there and be able to bring it back out.
Yeah. It's always fun. And then there are other ways to update screens. Like I said before, you can do it when you're making your updates on JSM. There's different ways to do it beyond just the summary field, but a summary screen. And then keep essential fields on there. That's your field configuration. Your things such as description, you can make those fields required. There's other ways around that now too. Schemes. We're gonna kind of go by this one pretty quick, because pretty low on time there. So when you're setting up a project, you gotta make sure you have your screen scheme set up. So like I mentioned earlier, you have your screens. Then your screen schemes, those are where you tie your screens to the create, edit, and view options. Then you have your work item type screen scheme. So that's where you now tie those screen schemes. I was saying the word schemes way too much, but that's where you put your screen schemes into the associated work item types. Like I said earlier, once again, your work item types are your backbone of your project. They're driving what your customers or what people can see. I'm going to remember to visually press the button while I'm talking, and it'll go through the slides. Workflow scheme. This is a little bit simpler. You've got your work item types, you tie it to the workflows. So each of your work item types can have different workflows. That's why it's important to know if that escalation work item type does have a different workflow, if it does have a different life cycle than just a regular request. And then scheme name matters for future view. Here we go, the 12th grade thing again. But it's really important because putting a name in the scheming and also adding a description in there lets you know when you come back 6 months later to make an update, because maybe the change management team wanted to add a few new fields, and you don't understand what that, which one that actually is, if you're not having the word change in there, or what project or what team it's for, that can get really confusing. When I took over at the healthcare company, the scheming was called the admin's name and the date. So I was dealing with the initials, we'll just say JS dash 2019 and then a random date. That was the name of the schemes. What can I figure out from there? And there was no description. So please, for yourself, for people who may eventually join your team and help out, make sure the schemes make sense. Name what they're doing and what they're for. Permission notification. Roles are one of the best things that there are out there. Roles are how you allow your customers, internal or external, to kind of self-manage their projects a little bit. Because with roles, they should make sense. You know, currently it comes with users, admins, things like that. You can add additional roles, developers, whatever you want it to be, project managers. They're used for permissions and notifications. So now what you're doing is you're giving the power to the end user. If they're able to update someone and add them to a role, you as an admin are no longer having to go in and update the permission scheme to add John Doe or add Steve Smith. The roles are taken care of because the roles are part of that permission or notification scheme. Like I said, it gives you a little bit of break. Use it in permissions. And the key thing, like I mentioned, don't overflood inboxes with notifications. You know, and now you can also empower your users to also turn off some of those notifications, turn off when they're doing the change themselves. Don't spam them.
That inbox with notifications. I screwed up once when I was doing this migration and stuff, and then I had to do a group edit, and I had that box checked to notify.
Yeah.
And one of my head developers came back and he said, I just got 1,400 notifications.
Has anyone else ever done that? Done a bulk edit and not? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I did it. I did it over the weekend when we were doing a migration. I did a bunch of bulk edits, and my manager came up to me Monday and said, "Why do I have 10,000 notifications?" Because I did like 10 moves. I was like, oh no. I didn't get them because, as mentioned earlier, I had a rule set up that just pushed them all the way for me. So that was fun when the company had their quarterly update and they called out and said, I'd like to thank Brian for making sure our email server can handle 10,000 emails. So we call it a stress test. Yeah, exactly. Added enhancements. So after we build those items we talked about, our work item types, our workflows, our screens, permissions, notifications. The project setup, the project makes sense. You're building it with intent. You're building it with purpose. You're building it based off of that request. Now we can add the additional things that most likely the customer is saying that's it. Those are the things that have to happen. There are enhancements that we could build on top of that project. SLAs, and that's customer requests. They did have 3 SLAs. Now that we have our work items set up, we have our workflow set up, our statuses. Now we could build those SLAs to make sense, stop when they should or start when they should. Automations. Automations are just as good as the information you have in your project, right? Triggers, things like that. You need to have your work item type set up. You need to have the process set up. Dashboards, building your filters, knowledge-based integrations, forms for JSM, and other items. I couldn't think of anything else, so I did other items. What else could we add to a project that would be an enhancement? Think about it. Or other things.
Do you have an example of the knowledge-based integration?
I don't have one on me, but with JSM, really easy just to connect a Fluent knowledge base to it, and then you got self-service set up. I also have a video on that on these things. I got really happy that I found the enhance button. If anybody watches any crime show or anything like that, and the agent's always typing and they're just enhancing, there's always come behind and says enhance, and they're just typing away. I got excited about that. So the key takeaways: structure first. Build, understand your structure first. Build with intent. Features second. The cool stuff will come after you build the structure. You can't have a building without your foundation. You couldn't have this cool room. It's pretty hot in my room. Name with intention. Make sure the names make sense. You will thank yourself. Future you will thank yourself. Your teammates will thank yourself, and eventually, maybe somebody else will thank you when they have a vision as well. Reuse schemes. If it makes sense, if you have projects that are all the same type, reuse those schemes, reuse those workflows. If they all have the same workflow, there's no reason to have 10 different workflows doing the same thing. Maybe it makes sense later on to split them out, but you can initially start reusing it where it makes sense. Build a strong foundation at the scale, and find the key items in the requirements. Go past all the noise. Find the words: enhancement, task, risk. We started ticket, and then it's done. Find those pinpointed items in that customer request. And any questions or anything about that? I'm not tired. Yes, question all the way back there.
Have you ever used components instead of creating different products?
Hi, I'm Brianna. Have you ever used components instead of creating different work items that are out of the box, different than the out of the box Jira ones that are available?
Thanks.
Yes.
Want to talk about it?
Good.
Talk about it.
So trying to understand is with this limited, for a few months possible or customizations, using components to break down project makes it very easy to group things together. It helps break it down to maybe a different kind of project or time that has consent or escalation, especially in a case like where you have a bug. It does have a priority, but maybe there's something else that you want to use to tag it with, which helps with it as metrics.
That's a good point. That's really good. Thank you. One other thing too, I said templates do add a lot of things on, but templates are really good to get something started. It's just about making sure you're maintaining what you do with those templates. You can also try using Robo to help you build a project as well, which I tried it. It works pretty good. Any other questions or anything? Is everybody just ready to go to the last keynote and call it a day? Maybe 2 questions.
I don't have a question. I don't need a mic.
We think
I
we
need a copy, but I don't need a mic. So, Just thinking about when you had the edit in the view screens and the create screens, something I wanted to call out that I've seen happen more than once is somebody's like, oh, I want a required field. So they make a field required, but they don't put it on the create screen. And you can't create the issue because you haven't filled out the required field, which would allow it to transition to the next step. So keep that in mind when you do required fields, how you're doing that. I actually recommend doing it in your workflow and validator. That's a good idea. But just keep that in mind on your screens.
That's what I feel configuration, yeah.
It's a fun one. That
Yeah. We'll get a little quiet here.
Sponsored by Team, save you.
And we had a question up here as well.
What,
Yeah.
where's the question? You?
Yeah, let me, I don't have any questions. I might. Let's go on to now.
I have a simple question. We talked about how people can put really bad names and you don't really know what that means. I'm afraid I'm one of those people. So what examples do you have of what works and doesn't? Like is it a sentence? This is what I'm doing. Like what logic do you use to put a good name?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because it's kind of how your company has standardizations and whatnot. But what I've done in the past, if it's something that was very specific for that project or for that team, so let's say it was customer support requests, I would start off with CSR and then put in what type of workflow was it for? Was it an enhancement workflow or was it a change workflow? And then I like to put in a version just so that way I know what version this is on. And I always, when I create that new workflow, save at least that one backup behind it. Just something that you can look at and go, okay, I understand what this is for now. Maybe it's not just for one specific project. Maybe it's for a team, or not a team, but like one project that you have could be enhancements. And you have a specific template for that where you can just have it enhancements dash wherever it is. As long as it makes sense, like see, cast together and hand it, what we got. Because there's multiple ways to do it.
Yeah, well, if I have a workflow that's going to be shared, or pretty much anything that's going to be shared,
Yeah.
including this, I dub it global.
Yeah.
So instead of the project key,
Mhm.
then what, I put global in all caps, because then hopefully that cues someone to check how many projects are using this thing. I hope. And then in the description, I will put the ticket number where I was requested to create said thing.
Yep.
Because sometimes I need to refer back to the original request when it asks me to change.
Yeah, very good. Those are very good points. Thanks for sharing that.
Over here as well.
Just a question back to the naming of it. Because you might use, I'm assuming the naming data in JDL, you have like a limited character limit you prefer, just to avoid having to enter like long names, dates.
I always try to keep it somewhat short, but there's really no limitations on how long. It can be as descriptive as you need it to be.
Yeah, I would usually do the where, so
Yeah.
the project key,
Yeah.
the work type that it affects if it's not affecting all work types
Yeah.
on the project. And then basically the what.
Yeah.
So if it's like an approval, I might say with approvals.
Yeah.
Because it's like different from standard workflow that doesn't have you.
If you're working with a team of admins, the who is also not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's not bad either, or at least include it in the description or have that somewhere for tracking. That's what JS did, but they just put it as their all-night scheming. Another thing too, that I wanted to mention, we talked about enhancements, and it was mentioned yesterday too, is when people come to you for a project and they ask you for new things, ask why. Always ask why. Don't just ask, just get some sort of a reason. Just understand it. And if it still doesn't make sense, you can say why again. You can ask why. Make sure when you're going through it, you're basically having them walk you through the reason behind needing something new so that you can keep your structure strong and still scalable.
And one of the things also document assumptions. Sometimes we assume it's not doing that way, but maybe it's not wrong. So with a why, do not assume the person will understand. Sometimes the things that are ideas so original is unique, and then you have 10 of those in place of products or things. Do not assume, if you assume, document. Assumption document are the best friends.
Yeah, documentation and assuming, yeah, like I said, if you don't ask why, you're gonna end up with, if you don't ask why, you really enjoy doing cleanup. They're wrong. It's really what it comes down to, because you're gonna go, we've got 30 workflows, I'll do the same thing, you have added these SLAs that don't make sense. It's cleanup time, or you can just ask that one more question. Any other questions? If not,
One more question?
one more question? All right.
3, 2, 1.
Well, I
Thank
want
you
to say
very
thank you guys, everyone. Have a good day. Have a good side.
Okay, we have a keynote speaker to close and enjoy the weekend.
Wait, I wasn't the keynote? I wasn't the keynote?
No, no,
I don't remember.
the best quality before the quick.
Yeah, that's what it was.
So release team, DevOps tool specialists. We provide professional services and software reselling around the leading software DevOps tools like Atlassian, GitLab, GitHub, JFrog, and others. To talk with us about DevOps, here's our contact information. Please call 866-887-0489 or via email at info@releaseteam.com.